To my 12 fellow survivors, greetings. I'm Carol Sturka.
How's it going, Carol? We are back with my deep dive into this 5th episode of Season 1 of Pluribus. In this episode, we find another side of Carol where she's literally forced to taking care of herself because, as I predicted last week, the hive mind is afraid of her figuring out how to reverse things, but also because she's exposed some of the greatest weaknesses. Our lone wolf Carol finds out what the others like to consume, and I've got some ideas of what that might be, and oh boy, what she uncovers is gonna blow your mind because it's dark and quite disturbing. Think about the saying, wolves in sheep clothing, as we break down this episode. With all that said, let's dive into this episode, which is filled with stress and a lot of cartons of milk, and one of the coldest shoulders Carol has ever received. Full spoilers ahead. This episode opens back inside the hospital, and the atmosphere is pure organized chaos. The others are prepping to move everyone out. And let's not ignore the man casually drinking a carton of milk, a detail that will be very key in this episode. We find Carol yet again looking stressed about putting Zosha's life on the line after what she did to her in last episode. Now, just when her stress levels couldn't get higher, the phone rings and it's Lexmi. She is yelling at Carol, demanding to know if she's mentally unsound, not just for giving Zosha a heart attack, but for making her son cry. This has to be nice for Carol, a counterpoint to the hive mind's pure happiness. Having a raw human protective rage thrown right at her has to be a good change of pace. Now Carol tries to share her breakthrough about the reversing of the joining, but Lexmi isn't hearing it. She threatens Carol never to upset her son again and hangs up. Now that phone call marks the beginning of Carol's complete isolation. When she asks one of the infected to make sure Lexmi never calls her again, the hive mind quickly gives her a nervous glance and rushes off, actively avoiding her. Now at this point in the show, we've seen the hive mind try to reassure Carol before, normally saying things like, "Oh Carol, it's not your fault," or "You actually saved their life," but not this time around. Now we see more of this avoiding Carol treatment and her getting the cold shoulder here in this next scene. As Carol visits Zosha in her room, who by the way has a breathing tube inside of her, we see Carol asking one of the infected if she's okay, and she gets a pretty flat response.
She's gonna be fine.
No emotion, no comfort, just a detached acknowledgement. Now again, this confirms my theory I shared in my last breakdown. With the combination of the sadness Carol inflicted in episode 3, coupled with the profound betrayal last week, is steadily chipping away at the hive mind's forced pure happiness. Now we watch as Carol is exhausted and she takes a nap. And the instant she falls asleep, the infected execute the ultimate ghosting plan. They silently walk into a long line, leaving Carol abandoned in an empty hospital. The distance I predicted is now literal. The hive mind is running from Carol, not just because her behavior is harmful, but again, it's because she is getting dangerously closer to figuring out a cure. Her solution means their dissolution. Now when Carol wakes up, the hospital is deserted. She calls the help number only to find a voicemail.
At the tone, you can leave a message to request anything you might need. We'll do our best to provide it. Our feelings for you haven't changed, Carol. But after everything that's happened, we just need a little space.
And this voicemail is a classic breakup playbook approach. "We need some space" is a classic line from a toxic relationship type of situation, and this dynamic between Carol and the others is now a two-way street of emotional manipulation. Now we see Carol get in a cop car and drives to the nearest tallest building she can find. Now on the roof, she sees the others are literally leaving town as Carol finally has what she wanted, and that is them leaving her literally alone. It's day 8, 22 hours, 36 minutes, and 30 seconds. It's now nighttime and Carol returns home and begins writing what she's going to say to the other uninfected as she sets up her camcorder and records herself for what she recently learned. She makes sure to hide the bottles of alcohol in the background and gives one hell of a pitch to saving the world. Carol immediately jumps into her core theory about the possibility of reversing the joining. She shares that the infected cannot lie, and their sadness that led to tears and their current abandonment are proof that she's right. They are afraid because she's on the right track.
And when the day comes that you have peace and love forced upon you, who knows, maybe in that last fleeting moment, you might just realize you treasured your individuality.
And she calls them to work together, and they owe it to saving humanity. Now, Carol calls the helpline again, not to make a plea, but to make a demand. She wants to mail her recordings, and she wants the hive mind to make copies and to subtitle it for those who don't speak English. Carol is weaponizing their core philosophy and their willingness to please her and to help her in any way possible. But she's also weaponizing their biggest weakness, and that's sadness, as she threatens them that if they don't oblige, there will be a bad mood Carol incoming. And we all know how catastrophic that can be for the collective happiness, as she leaves the recording outside, awaiting for it to be picked up. Now, Carol leaves the recording outside, and within minutes, a drone arrives to collect it. Again, I can't help but to think of a breakup scenario. This drone is basically serving as a mediator. It's the friend who comes by the apartment to pick up the ex's clothes because the two of them just can't talk without fighting. This was easily one of the funniest episodes to me up until the very end of this episode, which again, my theory I'll be sharing later, gets very dark. Now back inside, Carol actually decides not to drink, a small detail that shows that she's in a serious mode as we see her eating yet another microwave dinner. Her not deciding to drink for most of this episode makes me feel like this is a massive detail. To me, it comes off like she's locked in. She's in a serious focus mode, like she's researching a new book to write about, and I bet if she was to research and make a book about the current situation, it will probably be titled How to Reverse Global Infection for Dummies. Now we get this tender moment that reminds us that Carol is still grieving over her loss. It's here for the first time since everything went completely sideways that we see Carol finally gathering up the courage to sleeping in the bed that her and Helen used to sleep in together. As she attempts to fall asleep, she hears something coming from the outside. Carol peeks out to find a pack of wolves going through her trash, which had the delicious food that she threw away. Now immediately, Carol snaps back into her protective fight or flight mode. She grabs a golf club from the garage and screams and yells for them to leave. Now, remember a couple episodes ago when Carol was in the Sprouts and she claimed to the others that she loves her independence and she doesn't want help from them? Well, she's on the phone yet again. This marks the third time already in this episode that she's heard the same recorded message from the others about needing space. But despite that, Carol needs the hive mind's help yet again. She tells them she wants the lights cut back on immediately everywhere after this whole wolf situation. And just within seconds, we see the lights cut back on. The next morning, Carol cleans up the mess the wolves left behind. Now, for the fourth time, we see Carol calling a hive mind yet again. This time, it's about the trash needing to be picked up. Now, the phone rings, and it's a recording from the others giving her instructions to ensuring the pickup goes smoothly for the drone.
We can pick up your trash as long as it's bagged, and each bag weighs 17 pounds or less. Please remove all bags from the bin and place them on the curb a minimum of 2 feet apart. Thank you.
And guess what? Carol clearly doesn't weigh the bag, as we watch the drone swoop in, struggling almost immediately. It's having a difficult time with the overload bag before it ultimately gets caught in a streetlight. The drone breaks down, scattering Carol's trash and all of her problems right back onto the streets. Now, this drone disaster is exactly what Carol needed to stop needing the help of the others. It actually leads her to discovering something major about the hive mind, something she had to find on her own. Now, instead of her calling for another pickup, we see Carol takes matters into her own hands. She gathers her trash and empties it into a local trash bin at the park. Now, as she's sorting through it, putting some of the trash in regular trash cans, but also into the recycling bin, she notices something peculiar. A bunch of empty and different flavored milk cartons. Not just one or two, but a significant amount. She starts looking at other recycling bins, and it's the same story. As Carol the detective puts two and two together, this isn't just random. Her instinct starts kicking in as she investigates a much larger industrial-sized recycling bin. Now she falls inside, and inside she finds hundreds of the same flavored milk cartons. As she spots a location and heads to Duke City Dairy. Now Carol heads straight to the Duke City Dairy, which is the local distributor, a place that is eerily quiet. All production has stopped and machines sit idle. As she looks around, she finds a strange orange substance on one of the machines. But then she hears some noise coming from one of the back rooms. Carol finds crows gathered and eating one of the bags of whatever is inside these milk cartons. Now this discovery, these crows eating the particular material in the bag, is a key part of what Carol finds at the very end of this episode. Now we watch as Detective Carol takes a bag of the mysterious powder back home. Armed with her apparent past chemical knowledge and a desire for answers, she performs some homemade tests, trying to figure out what's going on with this milk and the ingredients in the bag. We watch as Carol records an update, a video log for the others. In her research, she's learned that the infected aren't drinking regular milk at all. Instead, it's some strange liquid that's mixed with water into powdery stuff. She describes it as it being odorless, it has a weird texture, and it registers a 7.1 on the pH scale, making it completely neutral, which is similar to celery and water. But as she finishes her recording, a moment of doubt washes over her. She realizes the others may not even be watching these recordings. This thought, combined with her frustration and possibly new distrust, leads her to deleting the recording and starting over from scratch. Now, we don't get to see the updated version of whatever she recorded, but I'm assuming that it shared a similar message, minus the part where she got emotionally upset at the end. Now, before moving on, I want to discuss the symbolism behind the milk in this episode and what I feel it means and how milk is sometimes used within movies and shows.
These are little milk cartons, the kind we give children in elementary schools, back when we had elementary schools and children.
Now, to me, the comments made by Carol about milk cartons and how milk is intended for children speaks to this idea that the hive mind and Pluribus are, in a way, just like children. They operate in a bubble of happiness, peace, and perfection, walking around without a care in the world. That is, until they met Carol, who represents adulthood, problems, stressful situations, and the desire to disrupt their blissful, naive existence. Now, let's talk about milk. Milk, as we know, is often associated with purity and innocence and youth. It signifies a fresh start. It strengthens bones, and it is a vital source of calcium, especially for children. But in media, milk can be used in many different ways. For example, there's the all-time great, in my opinion, Stanley Kubrick and his classic Clockwork Orange. In that movie, we remember the violent gang who frequently drank drug-laced milk to prepare for their brutal crime sprees. The image of these young thugs downing milk creates a disturbing contrast between youthful innocence and extreme violence. Another example that comes to mind is one of my favorite directors of all time, and Quentin Tarantino and his masterpiece, Inglourious Basterds. Remembering the beginning of that movie, Christoph Waltz's character visits a French dairy farmer who he suspects is hiding Jewish people. As Christoph Waltz's character interrogates the farmer, he calmly requests for a glass of fresh milk. Now, in this film, Tarantino masterfully juxtaposes our inherent idea of milk as a wholesome, pure drink with Christoph Waltz's utterly sinister intentions. And lastly, another favorite of mine and more recent memory is Jordan Peele's Get Out. Remember the character Rose? Towards the end of that film, we watched as she casually ate Fruit Loops one by one while sipping a glass of milk through a straw as she searches for her next victim online. This scene makes the connection between the innocence and the violence even more prominent because of the addition of the milk being drank through a straw and the Fruit Loops being eaten by hand, as it's the ultimate childhood breakfast staple. It was in that moment, at least for me, that I realized that Rose was just a straight psychopath. So the question is now, why does milk work so incredibly well as a symbol of hidden evil? It all comes down to the power of contrast. Milk represents everything these villains aren't: pure, innocent, and nurturing. By consuming it, they're essentially wearing a mask of normalcy, a veneer of purity that makes their true horrific nature even more frightening. The use of milk, again, in films and television also ties into the border themes of corruption and tainted innocence. Hell, even one of my favorite shows on TV, I think about Homelander's obsession with milk and The Boys. Again, the sight of villains or evil people or complicated characters drinking milk has become a major red flag for this character is not quite right. It's a subtle but ultimately effective way for storytellers to signal us as an audience that something sinister lurks beneath the surface. Now, applying everything that we discussed, apply that to this 5th episode of Pluribus. Now, with that out of the way, let's shift back into gears and talk more about Carol. As night falls, a new drone arrives to pick up her last recording. Inside, Carol pours herself another drink for a moment of peace that she doesn't get to enjoy. And that's because she hears some noise in the backyard and it's the wolves again, but this time around there's a lot more of them. But also this time around they're digging at Helen's grave. Carol runs outside this time around without hesitation, confronting the growling wolves. Her first instinct is to get a weapon as she dashes to the police car, desperately trying to get the gun, but she can't unlock it. Quick thinking Carol comes up with another game plan as she turns the sirens on and she drives the police car right into the backyard, crashing through her own fence and effectively making the wolves run away. It was here that I couldn't help but to see the wolves being used as a metaphor for Carol and what she thinks of the dangers and the intrusiveness of the hive mind. Think about it. They invade her space. They try to take Helen, digging at her grave. To Carol, they are dangerous, and she does everything in her power to prevent them from negatively affecting her life. It almost makes me think of the hive mind as wolves in sheep's clothing. They appear nice and peaceful, but underneath they are maybe dangerous animals. And maybe when they don't eat, they get aggressive and angry and dangerous, and remember that for later. The wolves in this episode to me feels like foreshadowing for later episodes. Next morning, we find Carol slept in a police car, determined to assure that the wolves won't return. Now, as she wakes up, Carol realizes that she had the key to remove the handcuff this whole time. It was a key on the keychain of the police car. Think about another interesting metaphor here. It's almost like she had the answer to her problems right in front of her face or within herself all along. Now, what does Carol do with this newfound self-awareness? She heads straight over to a builder shop. She loads up some stones, determined to fix and reinforce Helen's grave to ensure that those wolves never can dig at it again. Now the day goes by and Carol, without any help from the others, a significant detail showcasing her growing self-sufficiency, and manages to complete this task on her own. Now inside, we watch her later on, quietly with purpose, paint a headstone with Helen's name on it. To me, this whole sequence highlights a strong contrast with Carol. Carol, our hero of the story, is actively building, protecting, and confronting. She's taking proactive steps to deal with her perceived threats and her own grief. Back inside, Carol has another drink made, but this time she finally can take a sip of that drink, but as she sits down, she accidentally knocks over the material that the others use in the milk, and she sees a barcode on the side of the bag and heads over to the local grocery store. Inside, she scans the barcode, but it's not in the system. As Carol looks around to see if she can find a similar barcode, and she finds herself in a dog aisle, and she notices that one of the dog food bags uses the same design, and she sees the same barcode and finds the address and heads that way. As we come to an end of this episode, now at the place that the bags are made, Carol heads inside. Inside, she finds a very large freezer. Now remember back in episode 3, the hive mind talked about the need for conservation? Now Carol opens that freezer and finds racks upon racks of what I'm assuming are the same items that we saw in the grocery store, which are a variation of frozen fruits and vegetables and just normal grocery store goods. Now Carol makes her way through the shelves and she comes across this covered bag, and at first she looks to be unsure what she's looking at, but she slowly backs away in shock to figuring out what it is. So remember early in this breakdown, I mentioned how I compared the hive mind to the wolves in sheep clothing and my thoughts of the ending being very dark and disturbing. Well, we've made it to that point in the breakdown. Think about the wolves digging into Carol's trash for food and later attempting to digging up Helen's body to eat. Now take that and apply it to the hive mind and how they're surviving. Remember back in episode 2 when we first met Zosha and they were loading up the bodies in that truck that had a milk logo on the side of it, and we saw a similar truck in episode 4 with a similar logo. I remember thinking to myself in episode 2, I wonder what they're doing with all these dead bodies of those who died during the joining. Now this answer may be crazy, it might be wrong, it might be dark and disturbing, but I believe the hive mind have used those dead bodies and they're actually consuming them. I believe they're processing the remains. I think they're chopping them up, reducing them, and mixing them into the dry material that's found in those dog bags. Now remember the crows earlier that we saw in the episode. Like, crows are known for eating human remains if need be, and they were eating the same material. I believe the hive mind isn't just seeking conformity, they are desperately consuming the dead to sustain their collective life. But now the question is, if this is to be true, How long could this last? Is the plan to keep it going as long as people continue to die, and once dead, they use their bodies to consume, continuing on this cycle? Now, what happens if they run out of bodies? I'm sure that's going to be a long time from now, like maybe seasons from now, but do they start turning on the living who refuse to join, creating their new ingredients? Also, why humans? I can go down this rabbit hole with all these questions. For example, what if Carol stops the supply? If they are consuming human remains to survive, what happens if they are deprived of their milk? Will they die like, for example, wolves who starve for food? Or will they become aggressive, akin to like zombies desperate for flesh that sustains them? Continuing that last point, if the dependency is broken, is there a possibility they might return to their normal human ways, or are they permanently wrapped by this horrific diet? This realization in episode 5 could be wild if my theory comes to be true, because it shows that beneath the polite smiles and collective harmony of the hive mind lies the most primal, ruthless instinct for survival, making the wolves in sheep clothing metaphor literal. So overall, as far as my review of this episode, at the time of this recording, I've seen the episode a few times, and admittedly on the first watch, I didn't really take too much from the episode. It wasn't until my later viewings that I really came to appreciate the nuance of what Carol's going through in this episode, but also the symbolism of the milk. There's also so much subtext with the wolves and connecting it to the hive mind. I'm really interested to see if my thoughts about the milk being the dead bodies comes true, because if that is true, that's going to open up a whole new can of worms, or in this case, a whole new can of bodies. With that said, we have come to the end of this week's breakdown of episode 5 of season 1 of Pluribus. Now the $1 million question is, what did you all think about this 5th episode? Let me know in the comments below what worked, what didn't work, favorite moments, what are your thoughts, your theories, your deeper meanings, what did you all think about my theory? Let's talk about it all in the comments below. Thank you all for watching or listening to this week's breakdown. Now, if you all have made it to this point in the breakdown, I thank you so much for the support. Do me a favor, the special word of the week to put in the comments right now is #GotMilk. Now, if you all enjoyed yourself and enjoyed this week's breakdown of Pluribus, do me a favor, hit that like button, and when you're on YouTube and you hit the like button, there's a hype button that pops up, and when you hit the hype button, it spreads this video out to new viewers, and I would appreciate the support. Also, if you all could share the video to anyone and everyone you know that loves talking about this show just as much as we do. And last but not least, if you enjoy my Pluribus breakdowns and you want to stick around and enjoy more coverage of this show, Welcome to Dairy, and all the new movies that come out, consider sticking around by subscribing to the channel today. Now, if you all were listening to this breakdown via podcast, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, or wherever you all get your podcasts, thank you all for listening. Please share the podcast, leave your thoughts about the episode in the comments below, but also follow the podcast, leave me a rating and a review. I would really appreciate the support. Alrighty, y'all, until next time, remember that you all are awesome, stay safe out there, and also remember, always check the labels on the milk cartons to assure that there's no funny business going on. All right, everybody, I'll see you all again soon.